It started as a whisper. She first noticed it on a receipt, $3.16 for a coffee she didn't remember ordering. Then on the microwave clock blinking, 3:16 a.m., when she woke from a dream she couldn't recall. Highway billboards, random street signs, even her grocery queue ticket. 3:16 kept following her like a gentle but persistent tap on the shoulder from something she couldn't see. She tried to laugh it off. Coincidence, but deep down, something tugged at her spirit, something sacred. She began to feel watched, not in fear, but in stillness, as if the sky itself had paused just for her. Miles away, he was going through the motions. Work, gym, numb. When he glanced at the scoreboard during a late-night basketball rerun, the clock read 3:16. He didn't flinch, just rolled his eyes. Another one. He'd been noticing it too, enough to mention it to his roommate once, only to be met with a smirk and a, "Bro, you're overthinking it." Still, something about it gnawed at him, even if he'd never admit it out loud, especially not after he'd spent years learning not to believe in signs, soulmates, or serendipity. God was silent, and he preferred it that way. But that night, both of them, miles apart, strangers in different cities, fell asleep and dreamed the same dream. A vast white field, a faceless figure dressed in light. The air shimmered with reverence, like the breath of heaven. The figure spoke softly, almost sadly. "John 3:16, it said. Then, it whispered her name, then his. They both jolted awake, gasping, the image seared into their minds like holy fire. Neither could explain the dream, nor shake the feeling that someone, something, had just woven their names into the same sentence for the first time. They had never met, but now, something had already begun, and neither of them would be able to forget it. She hadn't planned to stop in that town. It was supposed to be a quick overnight stay between cities, just enough time to rest. But when Sunday morning came, something stirred in her chest, a longing, an ache. She searched for the nearest church without thinking, not for a sermon, not even for hope, just silence, maybe answers, or maybe just air. He was there only because of his mother. She had begged him for weeks to come, just once. It had been years since he stepped foot in a sanctuary. He didn't believe anymore, not really, but when she told him she had a feeling, he couldn't say no. The small chapel smelled like wood polish and old hymnals. A choir hummed softly under their breath. She slipped into a pew near the back, unnoticed. Moments later, he arrived and sat beside her, unaware of who she was. Neither looked at the other. Their eyes remained forward, but something shifted in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. As the service progressed, they both fidgeted in subtle discomfort, not from the message, but from the strange, magnetic energy between them. Two strangers who weren't supposed to feel anything suddenly feeling everything, told only that someone he knew was in critical condition. He didn't expect it to be her. She lay still, too still. Machines breathed for her. Tubes and wires replaced the warmth of her voice, her stubborn arguments, her cautious faith. The room smelled sterile, but the moment felt holy, like God had stepped in and everyone else had stepped back. He stayed by her side longer than he thought he would. He didn't owe her anything, really. They weren't close, not officially, but something about her quiet strength had left a mark on him. And now she couldn't speak, couldn't explain, couldn't fight with him. Needing to find a contact, family, someone, he looked through the bag the nurse handed him. Phone, keys, a paperback novel, and then, tucked deep inside, a small, worn leather-bound journal with a blue ribbon folded between the pages. He shouldn't have opened it, but something compelled him. Inside were handwritten prayers, not pretty ones, raw ones, some crossed out mid-sentence, some tear-stained. It felt like stepping into the heart of someone who had long since stopped performing for God and started pleading instead. And then he saw it, his name, in her handwriting, spelled out clearly, underlined. "Lord, prepare him for me, even if I don't know him yet." The entry was dated 3 years ago. He dropped the journal. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. The hum of the hospital room dulled, replaced by a single thought pulsing through his veins. How could she have known his name? They hadn't met, not officially, not 3 years ago, not even close. He picked the journal back up, hands shaking. Read the entry again and again. The words weren't romantic, they weren't dramatic, they were surrendered, painfully surrendered. This wasn't a girl dreaming of fairy tales. This was a woman writing to heaven in the middle of the night, unsure if anyone was listening. And somehow, he was the answer. He sat alone in her quiet apartment, the prayer journal spread open on the worn wooden table. The dim light from a single lamp cast long shadows across the pages, as if the words themselves were whispering secrets in the dark. Every line, every scrawl of ink felt heavier than the last. He traced the timeline of her pain and hope, heartbreaks, losses, lonely nights, all punctuated by pleas for strength, for guidance, for love. And then there was him, his name written and rewritten, sometimes neat, sometimes desperate, always underlined with a trembling hand. It was as if the journal wasn't just a record of her prayers, but a map, a divine blueprint laid out in plain sight, connecting the dots of their lives like constellations in the sky. Every delay she endured, Every door that closed, every tear she shed, none of it random, they were preparations, and somehow, unknowingly, he had been a part of this pattern too. The failed relationships, the dead-end jobs, the nights when he felt like giving up. They lined up like pieces of a puzzle neither of them knew they were solving together. His heart twisted between awe and disbelief. Was this truly orchestrated by God, or was he unraveling, losing grasp on what was real? Then his eyes caught something that made his breath catch, a second journal entry, barely legible, with a name carefully scratched out. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, but beneath the erasure, a name lingered faintly, someone else's name, someone important, and where her name should have been, it was replaced by his. The realization hit him like a storm. Her prayers had shifted, her heart had changed. Had she been prepared to love someone else first, someone from her past? Or was this another step in a plan too complex for him to understand? His fingers trembled as he closed the journal. Questions spun wildly in his mind. Was he just the next chapter in her story? Or the answer she'd been waiting for all along? The name lingered in his mind like a ghost he couldn't shake. He traced the faint scratches in the journal entry again. Her ex-fiancé, a man who had once been so close to her heart he nearly became her husband. The revelation stung like a sudden chill on a warm day. Someone had once held the place he now occupied, or so the journal suggested. Driven by a restless need to understand, he sought out the ex, the man whose name had been crossed out, replaced by his own. When he found him, the truth landed like a thunderclap. The ex-fiancé was gone, dead, killed in an accident on the very day she had last written his name in the journal. The timing was impossible. He felt the walls close in. Was her prayer a desperate release, a final farewell, or something darker, a transfer of a love unfinished, waiting to be reborn? He dug deeper into their shared past, piecing together fragments of stories whispered among mutual friends, hints of heartbreak, betrayal, and a love that never truly healed. The ex had looked eerily like him. Same eyes, same hesitant smile, the kind of face that lingered in memories like a half-remembered song. Was she praying for closure? Or for a second chance with someone who wasn't truly him? Every answer only bred more questions, and the line between fate and coincidence blurred further. He wondered if her heart had been trapped in the past, unwilling, or unable, to move forward, and if his arrival was a blessing or a burden. He had always carried questions about his past like scars beneath his skin, questions about a mother he barely knew, a family he'd never met. The adoption papers had offered facts, but no answers. Now, armed with the unsettling knowledge from the journal, he sought the truth. He called his estranged mother late one night, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Tell me everything," he demanded softly. Her voice cracked. The years of silence melted into confession. His biological mother wasn't a stranger. She was the very woman lying in that hospital bed, the one he'd been praying for without even knowing it. They had been part of the same prayer circle, bound by faith and friendship once, until something shattered their bond, something neither of them spoke of. The betrayal had run deep, a wound festering in silence. His mother's voice trembled as she revealed how the women's friendship had fractured, broken by secrets neither dared to share outside those sacred meetings. A rift widened by misunderstanding, fear, and a pain so raw it still bled beneath the surface. He sat stunned, trying to piece together the story written in half-truths and regrets. The woman he'd been drawn to, whose prayers had reached into his life years before, was also the woman who had given him away. His past and present collided in a way that felt less like coincidence and more like divine orchestration, or cruel irony. In that moment, he understood that the ties that bound them were tangled in more than faith. They were tied by blood, betrayal, and a shared hope for redemption. When her eyes fluttered open, the world was a blur of sterile white lights and unfamiliar faces. Sounds came in muffled echoes, and every breath felt like a question without an answer. He was there, his presence, both a comfort and a mystery she couldn't place. She stared at him, searching, struggling to pull his face into focus, but the memories slipped away like smoke through her fingers. "Who are you?" she whispered, voice cracked and fragile. His heart sank. She didn't remember him, not fully, not yet. He reached out, hesitating, afraid that the smallest touch might shatter the fragile peace between them. "I'm the one who's been waiting," he said softly. "The one you prayed for." She looked down, eyes filling with fear. Then, quietly, almost ashamed, she confessed a secret that had weighed on her for years, a truth darker than any prayer she'd ever written. "I've known who you were for a long time," she said, "but I kept it hidden, waiting for confirmation from God." Her voice trembled with vulnerability. The secret she'd buried was a fragile thread between faith and fear. She had watched him from afar, guarding her heart, unsure if this was divine destiny, or a cruel twist of fate. Now, face to face, the walls she'd built threatened to crumble. Trust was no longer a given, it was a choice. And in that moment, their fragile connection hung in the balance, waiting to be broken or to grow into something real. They stood on the edge of everything. The air between them was thick with unsaid words, trembling hope, and the weight of choices neither wanted to face. Was this truly divine timing, or just two wounded hearts grasping for salvation in the dark? He questioned everything, his faith, his feelings, the very truth of their connection. Was this love born from God's plan, or a desperate illusion crafted by fear and longing? She mirrored his doubts, her eyes clouded with uncertainty and the ghosts of secrets she'd kept locked away. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself? For a moment, silence swallowed them whole. He turned away, his chest tight with the ache of possible loss. "I don't know if I can do this," he whispered, voice breaking. "Maybe this isn't meant to be." But that night, in the fragile quiet of sleep, a voice returned. Soft, clear, familiar. "She chose you twice. Now choose her once." The words echoed in his soul like a command wrapped in mercy, a final call to courage, to faith, to love. Dawn approached, and with it, a decision to walk away or to step forward into the unknown. They returned to the church, the same humble pew, where their hands had first brushed, where a silent spark had ignited without words. The morning light filtered softly through stained glass, painting colors on their skin like blessings. No grand gestures awaited them, no sudden fireworks or thunderclaps, just a quiet peace that settled deep into their bones. They sat side by side, not needing to fill the silence with promises or explanations. For the first time, they understood what had been unfolding all along, not fate, not chance, but a covenant. Soulmates, they realized, weren't about perfect moments or flawless love. They were about divine preparation, about two imperfect souls, shaped and scarred, brought together by something far greater than themselves. He reached for her hand. She squeezed back gently. In that simple touch was a world of meaning, trust, surrender, hope. Later that evening, as she wrote in her journal, her pen moved with calm certainty. The final entry, dated tomorrow, read, "He finally chose me. Heaven was never late. I just had to wait." And with those words, the story wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to anyone who had ever waited, doubted, and dared to believe that love, true love, is always worth the wait.